I'm Brian Yacono. We are partnering with the Maine-Monitor to bring you some of the reporting being done by journalists at the nonprofit independent publication. And we'll be featuring one of their stories each Monday right here. And today we're talking about Maine's forests. Members of the Maine forest products sector say that the latest tariffs on Canadian timber and European forestry equipment are affecting the supply chain and hurting their bottom line. Well, here to talk more about these struggles is Emmett Gartner, a reporter with the Maine-Monitor. So thanks for being here. Good to talk about this.
Thanks for having me.
Big topic in Maine, of course. So let's kick things off about what forestry products are facing these tariffs. And what's the reasoning the Trump administration is giving for the need for these?
Sure. So in mid-October, the Trump administration implemented new tariffs on unfinished softwood Canadian timber. So that's just the logs that are in their raw form. Also increased tariffs on finished timber products, lumber, over 40% coming in from Canada. And then there is a 15% tariff on logging machinery that is imported from the European Union. And because this specialized forestry machinery isn't produced in the US, a lot of Maine loggers and other industry members have to buy it from the EU and import it and sell it here. The administration's reasoning behind the timber tariffs especially are that there's enough domestic timber supply in the US and American manufacturers should be buying that timber to produce and boost domestic manufacturing before we buy timber elsewhere.
But it's not that simple, of course. There's much more to this. All right, so part of the question would be, how are the tariffs kind of trickling down? We know the broad part of what is being tariffs. What are kind of the business owners feeling in the process?
Sure, so after these tariffs in October, Woodland Pulp's Baileyville mill and wood chipping facility took temporary downtime starting in November, directly following these tariffs. And they're still in downtime. They're expected to reopen sometime this month. The wood that they bring in from Canada, which they have to do because they're right on the border, that is part of the 10% tariff that has been added. So that's impacting them. And in turn, with Woodland Pulp not producing any pulp right now, they're not buying Maine logs as well as Canadian logs. So, loggers up in Aroostook County, they're having difficulty selling this type of product because, their old buyer's gone. And in turn, they're selling that elsewhere, sometimes for firewood, and that market is also oversaturated. They're not getting much value out of that. Elsewhere, there is this other tariff on the lumber, the finished product, and again, loggers in Maine, going the other way, are selling their wood to Canadian sawmills that then, trim it and then finish it and send it back down. But because that they have to pay that tariff on the way back, they're not willing to pay as much for Maine wood.
In the initial purchase, because they know getting it back and forth. Kind of the cost of being a border state, obviously, with another country there. What does this all mean for the industry? Obviously, there's the pause going on right now, which is certainly impacting those. What does this mean where we go from here, though?
Sure. So the industry in Maine has been in a bit of a contraction. The J mill closed in 2023, and some other mills have kind of decreased production. But there has been significant investment, and that's what a lot of members of the industry point to. There's Timber HP, which is kind of renovating this old Madison mill to produce wood fiber insulation, and the Sappi mill in Somerset has also invested big in their one of their paper machines. So there is this feeling that as Maine kind of pivots and looks to produce this more specialized wood product, that there is kind of this hope for the industry, and there's going to be use for all of this timber. But with these tariffs, that kind of complicates things in the near term. So they're really just trying to figure out a way to make it through, maybe try and speak with the Trump administration to get some sort of exemption in some places, because as I said earlier, the machines that people need here are not produced in the U.S., so it's not so simple.
A huge part of it.
Exactly.
I also just want to give a little credit to your reporting. You were telling me you visited some logging operations to see this all unfold, including some of that equipment you were just mentioning.
Yeah, just to get a feel for how specialized it is and the fact that it can't be bought anywhere else, and just so I can be sure to describe what it does and kind of how each tree makes its way through the supply chain in Maine.
Yeah, quite the process and very complicated. Emmett, thanks for joining us to break this down. If you'd like to read more of his reporting, of course, and understand more of that process and the equipment he was just telling us about, you can find the full story at the-maine-monitor.org.